So this is a slight change of pace from all of the previous presentations. I hope that we'll be able to give you an opportunity yourselves to join and to ask some questions of our panelists. We're here just before the lunch, but I'm sure that we will provide some weighty and interesting information for you before we can all exit and get our lunch. My name is Janet Anderson. I'm a journalist who currently works on the issues of accountability and justice. I'm often looking back at specific mass killings, things like genocides, and asking how to make individuals accountable for these. For example, how to provide justice for genocides such as Rwanda and Cambodia, and whether what we've come up with has actually been effective, and whether that means something to the victims. But now I have a group of historians with me who are grappling with the truths and the stories of a genocide a while ago, but still entwined in our current politics. 4 historians to discuss the topic after the Holocaust, the sad picture that continues to emerge. And we're going to delve in some depth both into the Dutch and the Lithuanian perspectives. As Robert said in his first keynote introduction, we should ask ourselves why people made the choices that they made under Nazi occupation. And a rough quote from him: "Why are the Dutch seen as saviors of Jews, but they were in fact not much better than Lithuanians who are seen as killers?" So, and also to extend that to ask what role historical research plays in helping society move from black and white to shades of grey. I'm going to ask first Marty Bax to speak. She is an art and cultural historian working with the Claims Conference, that's the Conference on Jewish Material Claims Against Germany, as the expert provenance researcher on the plunder of books and archives from the Einsatzstab Rijksleiter Rosenberg, the ERR, in the Netherlands. And Marty, you suggested that I ask you a question. You're going to have to fill in the details once I've asked the question. From next year, around 300,000 collaboration files of Dutch citizens will be published online. So in what way can these files contribute to a more realistic view on the war situation in the Netherlands? And how grey were the Netherlands in reality? I'm sure for many people there's a lot that is encompassed in that question, so please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to tie in with the compartmentalization of evil, because the Dutch are, in public view, are the prime example of resistance on the one hand. So they were white, but also the Nazis on the other side were the black guys in the Netherlands. And I want to show you with 2 slides how grey the Netherlands actually have been. Next year these collaboration files will come online. That is 5 years too late, because by law they should have been online 5 years ago. But there's a lot of resistance within the circles of collaborators to have these files online. And now I have made a small statistic of how these collaboration files are structured. You can see that the total population of the Netherlands was 9.2 million, and actually the amount of files is larger. This is 485,000 files, which is only 5% of the Dutch population. Now you would say, well, Netherlands was really clean in that sense, and even it becomes cleaner because only 155 persons were in some kind of measure were sentenced. But the main part, 329 people, were deemed with a small offenses, and they were dismissed. So of those 485,000 people, 2/3 were deemed not collaborators. And now if you see how much resistance there is of getting these files online, you may wonder, yes, but what is then the problem? See, because if the larger part is not a collaborator, why shouldn't you open the files and then have the facts for all those people? But I'll show you in 2 examples how difficult it was to determine someone a collaborator. Here you see the dot map of Amsterdam. This was made in May 1941 by people of the civil registry in a commission of the Nazis. The main person who commissioned this was Klaus Barbie, who was a very sadistic Nazi. And every dot you see on this map represents 10 Jews. So if you can see how in Amsterdam the Jewish population was concentrated in some areas. And this map was the start of the deportations, because the German government could just round up all those people from the addresses, and by and large they just deported the Jews. The interesting thing is that after the war, the Jewish Council was prosecuted for having collaborated with the Nazis. But the German Council was instituted by the Nazis to ratify, in fact, the deportation of the Jews. So the Jewish population themselves had to streamline their own deportation. And I don't know if the civil servants who made the map have been prosecuted after the war, because their names are not known. But the leaders of the Jewish Council had to defend themselves for having collaborated with the Nazis. That's a really, really thing that what the professor said, that if you are at the time, you see it differently from the perspective of now. Well, and the second one is the main thing where you can see how widespread collaboration must have been in the Netherlands. It is absolutely more than the 5%. I've made a scheme of how the government was organized in the Netherlands. The exceptional situation of the Netherlands was that instead of a military government, the Dutch government had fled to London and left our government vacant. So the Germans installed a government on top of the Dutch government. You see it at the top. Arthur Seyss-Inquart became the head, and he was the leader of the whole of the Dutch government. And he made 4 departments in which those civil servants of the Dutch government had to operate. So they had to execute all the laws and the orders of the Nazi government. Now, because I'm researching the looting of books and art, I had to make a scheme of which departments were actually active in the looting. And now you can see that all of the departments were active in the looting, and that even if there were Nazi officials who were at the head of the departments, they instructed Dutch civil servants to perform the looting. But then you also have society, those 329,000 that were not persecuted. They belong to the wider societal structures, and these were also involved because all those Dutch civil servants had to instruct other people in the Dutch society to perform all those actions. So in my research, I come across many names that are not even in those collaboration files. Now, one of the organizations which was separate of the Dutch Nazi government was the Einsatzstab Reichsleiter Rosenberg. And he was especially commissioned to loot books and art and archives. But from March 1942, he became the main looter of all the Jewish households. So he became the head of all of the looting. And he, in his turn, had hundreds of people who had to transport the books, who had ships, who he instructed all kinds of transport companies, also German, to get everything out of the country. So this is more or less the situation in the Netherlands. And then you can ask, how grey was the Netherlands in fact? So I think we, as a Dutch government, you should say, we have to put this out in the open so that people can get clear with the past. Huh? That's maybe, yeah. Do you?
That's fine, they've moved it on. Thank you. Thank you very much, Marty. Next we have Linas Venclauskas, who's a historian at Vitatis Magnus University, studying a range of topics, including modern anti-Semitism in Lithuanian society and the history of the Holocaust in Lithuania. I had suggested to you a rather broad question to understand what do we know now about what happened in Lithuania when the Red Army left in 1941 and when the killings of Jews started. What is the general understanding?
Thank you for the question and thank you for the invitation to participate in the panel. Again, answering to your question, usually when I'm speaking about the Lithuanian situation, there are two levels. One, let's say, academic or research level, which is rather well developed, and when we know the details, the information, and the second level is the society, the reactions, and those two layers do not necessarily match each other. Speaking in the other ways, generally, I would say Lithuanian mentality was still built partly as a victim. Saying that actually we suffered Nazi occupation. In Netherlands were dealing with. For Lithuania, it was already the second occupation. Before that, it was Soviet occupation, and after Nazi occupation, second Soviet occupation followed. So all the time, the sentiments, let's say, that first of all we are victims, and we should speak about what we have lost at this point. And in Lithuania under the Soviet occupation, one situation was, but especially in the Lithuanian emigre circles, especially in the United States of America, there was rather defensive position, saying first of all that we were the victims, we suffered from Soviets and from Nazis, and now we are also suffering from the Soviets. If there were the researchers and putting the unpleasant, I would say, truth for the Lithuanian society. Look, that there was a Lithuanian provisional government which was acting under the Nazis' occupation. There were a number of Lithuanians who were directly participating into the mass killings. So the reaction was, whether it was the rejection, saying that, okay, this is not true, just speculating, manipulating, and so on and so forth. By the way, anti-Semitic discourse, sometimes the global stereotype saying that the Jews are controlling media and so on and so forth, was also used by the Lithuanian immigrants, saying that we are not able to say the truth. What we are saying, it is not the exact historical facts, but we cannot say the truth because the media of the United States of America is controlled by the Jews. So we know the true story, but we are not allowed to say the story. On the other hand, when real, let's say, testimonies were provided, given to the society. So usually here in Lithuanian historiography we have double, so-called double genocide theory, saying first of all that actually, again, we Lithuanians are the victims, but usually I'm saying as in the kindergarten, you know, they started the first. So the rationale was here that actually Jews started the first. They were too supportive, too sympathetic during the first Soviet occupation. And because of the Jewish conspiracy whatsoever, Lithuania had lost its independence, which actually it is not true at all, but it was commonly perceived as the true statements, the true development of the history. So since the Jews started first, Lithuanians as if had the right to revenge or to react. So if not the Jewish manifestations and support of the Soviet occupation within this first year from 1940 to 1941, as if Lithuanians would not be so deeply involved into the Holocaust. So actually, yeah, the real situation when Nazis invaded, formally speaking, Soviet Union, but actually it was the territory of just 1 year ago, independent Lithuania. Actually, very soon, Jewish mass killings started in very, how to say, brutal and intimate way, meaning Holocaust by bullets mainly. Of course, we have to bear in mind the Nazi propaganda, which was very close. On March 1939, Klaipėda, Memel, and then the environments were occupied by the Nazis, and actually the ideas were circulating very intensively. Even opponents of Smetona's regime, Smetona, our authoritarian leader from 1927 till 1940. So the opponents of Smetona installed their offices, headquarters in Klaipėda and Memel, published the newspapers, pamphlets against Smetona and so on, and then smuggled it into Lithuania. At this point, also, usually I'm calling it contextual anti-Semitism, Jews were also blamed by the Smetona's opponent, saying that Smetona is not the leader we would like to have. He is not too nation-orientated, so on and so forth. But in the second, third, fourth position, Smetona's opponent would mention that actually he is also too pro-Jewish. So if we would get rid of Smetona, actually we would get rid of Jewish domination or something like that. So Nazis worked rather intensively on that image. And parallelly to this, right from the 1919, 1920 till the first Soviet occupation, actually this, again, global stereotype of Judo-Bolshevism, or that Jews are the supporters and true agents of the Bolsheviks, was very present in Lithuania as well. So as if the ground or the mental background was already prepared, saying that actually Jews are very supportive of the Bolsheviks, of the communist regime, and there are two different lines of interpretations. One line would say that actually within independent Lithuania from 1919 to 1940, there was no organized or legislative anti-Semitism, meaning no Jews discriminating laws were ever accepted. But now usually the metaphor is used about the glass ceiling, meaning that at certain positions, Jews were reaching some point of their careers, but no further. For example, there were from 1924-25, there were no Jewish origin ministers, no generals in the army, and so forth. And within this so-called people's government, pro-Soviet government, the Minister of Healthcare was Leon Kogan, the Jewish minister. So as if for the population, it was the obvious a fact that actually Bolshevik rule is the same as the Jewish rule. And when Nazis invaded, Red Army started to retreat, so self-organized Lithuanian so-called white band uprisers took their activities, and actually their premier target were communists and the Jews. And actually it was very, very mixed situation, and they were not making any selection between the Jewish population, so-called communists. And to finalize my speech, with a few exceptions, within 2 or 3 years of the Nazi invasion in Lithuania, actually there was no differences between the Lithuanian, let's say, communist and the Jewish population. They were all arrested and mass annihilation started, but within 2-3 weeks, then Lithuanian leaders of those organized groups decided something like, okay, Lithuanians might be trapped by the Bolshevik propaganda. They might be misled. So if we know that he or she is a communist, we should isolate them, but not to kill, because they might have the, usually I'm saying, Lithuanians have the right for the mistake. And for Jewish population, it was not applied at all. If you are Jew, that means that you are communist. On one hand, on another hand, your destiny is already set up, and then you will not have any future in this country. By the way, also the rhetoric was used rather, how to say, involving. First of all, Lithuanians were saying we are regaining our independence, and of course this is the mobilizing factor. On the other hand, Nazis were coming with the slogans. If we do not have the context, for example, Nazis were saying that we are building new Europe, which also is very promising and very, very involving. Who wouldn't imagine to have the new Europe? Our politicians, our bureaucrats also use the slogan like that, that we should do something for the new Europe. So the change was there, but no one was speaking about the content and the price of these events. So for this round, that's all.
Wow. Yes, what a run through. Thank you. I have so many extra questions, and I'm sure everybody else would have, but we need to carry on, including our different panelists. Let me turn to you, Arunas Bubnys, the Director General of the Genocide and Resistance Research Center of Lithuania. I'm wondering whether you can take us along with your professional research and explain how you have developed your understanding of Lithuania's role and the collaboration in the Holocaust. You know, it's been a long journey, I imagine, to get to where you are. I will put on my headphones to hear your answer.
Hello everyone, thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this international conference. It was very interesting for me to listen to the presentation of my colleague from the Netherlands, and I would like to briefly talk about Lithuania in a similar manner. Lithuania was also occupied by Germans, and if the Netherlands had this self-standing Reich institution, Lithuania was a part of Ostland Reich Commissariat, which also included 3 formerly independent states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, and the western part of Belarus. So at the beginning, Lithuania was under the rule of the armed administration until the end of July 1941, and then it was under civilian Verwaltung. So it administrated the land until the very end of the Nazi occupation, beginning of August, pretty much, or middle of August 1944. The management structure is very similar as in Netherlands. under the Nazi regime. There were also the low administrative level, Lithuanian administration, which under the rule of the Nazi administration, and Lithuanians were not allowed to have their own government. And there were some public servants, maybe equal to the current ministers. And there were some administrative units and such institutions. They were similar to current ministries, but they weren't allowed to be called ministries at the time. And if we talk about Holocaust and Lithuanian collaboration, this issue remains unresolved in Lithuania, and we need further research. And I would like to name some facts also that are not very well known. For example, you know probably that Lithuania was occupied and annexed by the Soviets until the 1990s, and this desire to get rectification for the KGB and other Soviet repressive structures, according to the currently available archive of the KGB, we had approximately 1,800 of people sentenced, Lithuanian residents sentenced for collaboration during the Holocaust, and 250 were sentenced to death. And when Lithuania regained independence, this issue became relevant again, especially in the United States. There were some cases of deportation for Lithuanians that became clear that they collaborated with the Nazis or had some discriminatory or involved in discrimination activities. For example, one of the cases better known is Lileikis case, who was a police chief in Vilnius, and also Deputy Chief Gimžauskas and others. And we do understand then that we didn't have many of such people, and after the war, 50 years later, only some of the people could be that could have been under the punitive law, they already were gone. And during the independence times, we realistically, such cases as Lileikis and some cases were not also finished in the court. If to talk statistically how many Lithuanians could have participated in the Holocaust, we should say that as some people say that only a small number participated. That's not true. The process was very well organized, logistically streamlined, and according to the Nazi law, also Lithuanian institutions partook as well as the residents. And we should probably talk about self-security battalions that were under the Nazis and all kinds of police units, supporting units in 1941 in summer and autumn that were involved in mass killings of the Jewish people. And this issue became apparent and became more relevant in 2010 when Lithuanian Jewish Association in Israel announced lists of Lithuanians who partook in the Holocaust. And it included approximately 5,000 names of Lithuanians. And to our center, our center was entrusted with checking whether the lists were true and whether these people actually were involved in the Holocaust. And this list, established by the organization, was also announced on the internet, but nobody indicated what resources were used for that. So we needed to find the resources, to check the names, and therefore the process required 2.5 years or so, from 2011 to 2013. And according to the information that we had, or information that we found, we identified that during the checking of the list, approximately 2,050 people actually were directly or indirectly involved in the Holocaust. Directly meaning who were involved in shootings, and indirectly meaning who were rounding up Jews and who were guarding ghettos or somehow differently partook in persecution of the Jewish people. So this number, 2,050, is not the final number, in my opinion. It should be several times larger. Unfortunately, we don't have reliable data that would help us identify how many Lithuanian residents partook in the Holocaust. And we cannot respond to the question, and we doubt that this question will be answered at any time. So this is as much as I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Let me turn now to Ronaldas Racinskas, I think has been the Executive Director of the International Commission for the Evaluation of Crimes of the Nazi and Soviet occupation regimes in Lithuania. Ronaldas, I'd asked you maybe to explore with us how far historical research, I remember Jana had it in her list of one of the many measures that could be needed, including justice, including memorialization, how far historical research does actually change people's perceptions. As Linas has just said, there's a different perception at societal level from research level, how it can change people's perceptions about the past.
Thank you. The short answer would be that it can and it cannot. So let me explore a little bit. And first of all, I would like to say that I very much like the title of our conference about the shades of gray. And I use this term, when I discuss about this complicated historical past of Lithuania. And first time it came, I think almost 10 years ago, when I think it's Richard Friedman, the chairman of Cape Town Holocaust and Genocide Center, came to Lithuania because he is rooted from Lithuania. His ancestors are from Lithuania. So we spent a couple of days traveling and looking for his family roots, and of course all the time we discussed this complicated history of Lithuania. And at the end of this trip, he said thank you, because he finds some interesting things which related with his family. And he said, look, I have different attitude. My attitude was really, talking about colors, it was a black attitude about Lithuania. And he said, now I have some shades he mentioned not gray. He said, I have some shades of black. And what he said as well, he said, it would be your greatest achievement, because I was talking about the importance, for Lithuania to come in terms with its own past. And he said it would be your greatest achievement if the Jewish people emigrated from Lithuania, the Jewish communities, let's say in South Africa, America, and other places, would have some shades of black. So this shows that it's really, the situation is really problematic. And as we deal with two totalitarian regimes, the Soviet crimes and Nazi crimes, of course we have contacts, we deal with people who were directly affected by these regimes, the Holocaust survivors or second, third generation Holocaust survivors, as well as those political deportees, as my parents were, yes, and these organizations. And I can say openly, it's really a hard task and hard job, because we're trying to stick to historical truth and facts. And as Linas rightly pointed out, that in academical research in Lithuania and internationally, I think we are, if not 100%, at least 95, 98%, we are in line with Western historical research and understanding of what was happening and what happened and the reasons and the consequences of the Holocaust. And speaking about, the population is a different case. And as I said, we're dealing with these two paths, and we try to stick on our own agenda. We don't want to follow anybody's orders, and don't want to drag the sheet, yes, from on one side or another side. And because of that, we are very heavily criticized by both sides. Some Jewish, I would say, propagandists or enthusiasts like David Katz, Zurov, now it's Gochin, he draws our institution and even myself that we are even worse than the neo-Nazis marching on the streets, because with skinheads and neo-Nazis everything is clear, and we are very sophisticated, people who are trying to obfuscate the Holocaust and other things. And at the same time, we have numerous declarations of Lithuanian patriotic organizations addressing the president, because our commission is a presidential. We are functioning as independent body under the government. So a lot of addresses that we should reorganize, we should be closed, because we are almost a part of world Jewish conspiracy and so on. And as long as we are hidden from both sides, I think more or less we are on the right track. So what the situation is in the society, I would say openly how I see. I have not conducted a particular research. I think, unfortunately, but the majority of population don't care at all about all these historical events. And even my friends, whom I consider educated people, they always ask me, so what you do, what is all about you do? So go to the business, do some real things, get decent salary. So what you do there? No, you have talent of other things. So why it's important? Okay, and I understand that it's sometimes difficult to explain why it's important, but we have another part of the society which is very, very much concerned about these topics. And here we come to the situation, as I call, the ghettos of memory. Yeah? So we have close group inside which groups where certain historical narratives are circulating. And I very much like, in previous presentations, we're saying that be aware of toxic leadership, yes, political leadership. And because the history is very, very strong social and political unifying factor of the society, or at least certain groups of the society, these leaders, I would say, of this ghettos of memory, we want to keep this gates, windows of these ghettos closed, to build higher walls of these ghettos of memory, and to put show fingers to another ghettos of memory which cultivate opposite narrative. And as I always say, that if we look at some historical periods, especially when we're talking about this first Soviet occupation, Nazi occupation, again the second Soviet occupation, if you look at the pictures we draw, so it's very in black and white colors. And if we look at these pictures and put together, so we have the same picture, but the colors are different. In one group, the colors are black, in another group of the same facts are white. And our institution, what we do in terms of research, we try to disseminate. What is, I think, particularly important, that we are international commission, and all the conclusions adopted by the Commission are adopted by the consensus of representatives of different countries who in a way represent these different historical theories and even different historical narratives and attitudes of the societies we represent. Lithuania, America, Israel, some European countries. And because these representatives are professionals, so for us maybe it's a little bit easier to find this consensus, but still not in all cases was very easy to find a wording which would be accepted for everyone. And when it comes to the society at large, we need time. We need a time to heal, and it's very. I think it would be very important. And what we do, I would never have this optimistic belief that people from this ghettos would believe in stories told in another ghettos. But at least we encourage them to open the windows, to meet each other on the neutral territory, if I could say, and to talk with each other. But we still have the fight, and sometimes it happens so that the leaders, these leaders of this ghettos of memory, we need each other. We need the common enemy. To show these are our enemies, and this is there is. I think it's the strongest unifying factor is the common enemy, and that's why we still have these clashes of historical debates in the society. The historical research is not on the count. The problem is that if somebody has a belief or prejudice, I even say, the historical truth established by historical research or archival documents, for them it doesn't matter. So if it's contradict with their beliefs, we will stick with their beliefs, but not with the historical facts. And at the end, I just say one example. So because we conduct seminars for the teachers who teach about the Jewish history, about the Holocaust. And because we believe that speaking about the Holocaust, we should not start from the killing pits or the gas chambers. We should start speaking about the common life of Jews, Lithuanians for the centuries. And we represented the Jewish tradition, Jewish origin, so how Jews came to Lithuania and other things. And after 2 days of this seminar, the teacher, so it's a teacher, it's supposed to be educated person, yes, the teacher raised hands and said, okay, so you told so many interesting things I never know, but how it can be true, because my mother said me this and that, and she repeated, the ugliest, prejudice about the Jews. So this is the really problematic process.
Thank you. Good conclusion. I want to open the floor to any of you to come up with some questions in a moment. But first, just to give the opportunity to members of the panel, is there anything that you would like to say to each other? Any follow-up questions or any additional, from what you've been hearing from each other? No? Okay. You all know each other far too well. Okay, I have my own questions to ask as well if there are no questions from the audience. So just though to start the opportunity here. Okay.
There's the question.
There's a question. Thank you, sir. You may ask in English or in Lithuanian as you wish, but please tell us who you are.
Ramūnas Kondratas. Memorialization is a big issue now in Lithuania, both of communist and Soviet era people, and also plaques and other street names that are being named for interwar actors who are somehow involved in the Lithuanian government. And so it's a very broad question, but maybe I'll go with the current one that's now in the news in Lithuania is the case of Kazys Škirpa, was the head of a Lithuanian organization formed in Berlin, and they were also responsible for the June uprising, 1941, and I guess about a month ago, some people put up plaque for Škirpa on the building, and wasn't approved by the city. It was taken down, and I guess yesterday there was a meeting in the city council, and I don't know what the upshot. I haven't read the thing, whether the plaque can be put back, and if not, and I think, I guess this is a question for Dr. Bubnys, because his organization have a memorandum saying that Kazys Škirpa was not a collaborator in the same sense. And it goes back to the differentiation of collaborators and all the points that they saw with the Dutch, all the striations of collaboration. I even thought of another one. Is there such a thing as ideological collaboration? Because Škirpa certainly said that there was no place for Jews, thought there was no place for Jews in Lithuania, but I don't think he did anything about that, or I don't even know if he wrote those words, because another person, Bubnys, was the one who wrote most of the documents that we have.
So thank you. I'm going to cut you off there, but thank you. This was exactly the question I had assumed somebody would ask, so thank you very much for doing so. It's directed towards you, but I think for everybody, I think it's also an interesting thing to discuss, the issues. Specifically, this is about what your research centre has said, but for everybody, the issues of memorialization and also collaborator, perpetrator, and where the lines lie. So please, may I start with you, please, Arunas?
Very well. We can start from me, or I can start. I think this issue with Kazys Škirpa is quite a long one, quite an ancient one. Historians of our center has produced the first declaration, historical declaration about Mr. Škirpa back in 2015, because back then there was a question about alley named under Škirpa, whether it should remain Škirpa Alley or not. And the discussion has continued for several years. And finally, the municipality of Vilnius city decided to rename this alley, and it was changed to, I think it was changed in 2018 or 2019 to the Lithuanian Flag Alley.
And it would seem that this discourse should have stopped back then because Ali was renamed. But now, recently, earlier this year, one of the parties, National Union, have been asking to place this memorial plaque for Škirpa as one of the first volunteer of the Lithuanian army at the end of the 1918, and he was one of the first to raise the Lithuanian flag on the Gediminas Tower on the 1919, the 1st of January. So the person was known for his input into Lithuanian independence, and the party wanted to place this flag on the building where there was the commandership of Vilnius city in 1919, and the volunteers could be recruited there, enlisted into the army. And the municipality has not answered, has not given any answer to this party, so they did it on themselves without any approval, and they placed that flag on the building. So according to the order of the municipality, this plaque was removed, and now there is also legal proceedings ongoing regarding this issue, and also discussions on the political and ideological level. I think Ronaldas Racinskas could tell more, because yesterday the so-called Sovietization Commission, who is responsible for the decisions regarding the renaming streets or soldiers' cemeteries, etc. And yesterday, this Desovietization Commission discussed this Škirpa's issue, and based on the conclusion of this commission, I, as the CEO of the center, have to make the decision whether I approve the commission decision or not. So this issue is again very relevant right now, because it is not the object of the historians anymore, but the political issue. It has become subject and object of the political discussions right now. So indeed, I do not hope any good from it, any good outcomes.
End of the translation. Thank you very much. Please, you've been thrown the grenade.
Thank you. Few remarks about history and politics. You know, what is the history? What is the history? History is the politics of yesterday. And what is the politics? Politics is the history of tomorrow. So it's, and when these historical events are, you know, very recent, and we still have people involved in one way or another in these political events, so this would be very, very difficult, you know, to have, you know, as we call, objective and, you know, one mainstream attitude, especially in these difficult circumstances. So Škirpa is one of these controversial examples. We have more of these examples like Jonas Noreika or Juozas Krištaponis and others and others. And yes, it's a little bit different case, but let's say also it's on another side. It's about Lithuanian artists, writers who during the Soviet time collaborated. So the best known examples, I would say, is Petras Cvirka or Salomėja Nėris. So we're dealing with all these issues as well, and it's not an easy task, I would say. And I can even say openly that by the law, our conclusions of the commission, I am deputy chairman of this so-called Desovietization Commission. By the law, our conclusions, our recommendations should be adopted by 2/3 of the participants of this commission. And I can say openly, yesterday we were not able to reach, definitive answer. Was he collaborator or was he not a collaborator in this case? But what we agree upon, and we agree unanimously, that in the case of such controversial figures, historical figures, we recommend to suspend initiatives putting new plaques and new signs of appreciation, because it would be a little bit strange, then we have already some kind of monument for the person which was built during the Soviet time, and he or she has kind of double history. So sometimes we recommend not to remove the monument or not to remove the or to change the street name, but we recommend to put the explanatory plaque or mark which explains another part of this personality. But in case of the new monuments, we recommended that this not should be done. This is the brief answer, but it again shows the complexity and difficulty of this historical events. And as Arunas rightly said, it became a political issue. And the problem also is, it was a good question, why municipality haven't done anything? Because on the one hand, 5 years ago, for the municipality was very clear. It was not the new street of Škirpa. We changed the name of the Škirpa, which already existed, which shows no more or less clear attitude, yes? And the political, I would say, tendencies in the society right now in Lithuania are, I would say, a little bit more favorable for more nationalistic and more, I would say, this right groups. I don't want to put, this general size, but to this side. And politicians were also counting. And we don't want to make their own decision, so we better, throw, this hot potato of a ball to genocide center or to our commission. But what we I am not a historian, but what we, the historical community of historians or people who in one way or another are in the field of history, were saying that this is a political decision, even the decision. So historians, we can present facts. And the fact shows that on the one hand, this person was the hero and the patriot of Lithuanian Republic, yes? On the other hand, was a collaborator or the ideologist of this anti-Semitism, yes? And to answer to the question, probably Hitler haven't killed any single Jew by his hands, yes, but or other Nazi people. So it's I would say the less evil is the not educated, person who is pulling the trigger, for me, than the ideologist who, by his words, who collects the army of these killers.
I'm going to come back to you, Marty, but Linas, would you like a word now?
Thank you. Actually, almost was already said. My remark would be that, and Ronaldas said that this is the political decision. So first of all, to my understanding, our politicians lack largely lack imagination, because what we are now doing or discussing, this is the second half 19th century mentality, when we are marking our territories, saying that this is our street, this is our monument, this is our plaque, as if that changed something. So this is not the way, I would say, but in order to find the way to solve the problem, I think it needs the imagination, it needs hard work, and it needs some time. If I personally would be asked about Kazys Škirpa, I would teach about Kazys Škirpa even in the high schools, but as the phenomenon of misleading understanding of patriotism, because he would consider himself being a patriotist, but the line dividing patriotism and positive activity sometimes is very thin in comparison with the atrocities you could have. Being a diplomat, a political leader, and a candidate in this provisional government as prime minister, for me, he is total disaster, because he was not able to count in front a few steps, because he was not able to understand the Nazis' ideology that Lithuanians or Lithuania are not the equal partners. So he lived in some kind of misleading, dreaming, self-created world, and he was not able to see the clear situation. So as an example of misleading ideology or misleading fantasies, I would suggest to teach about Kazys Škirpa on the one hand. On the other hand, because there are plenty of stories. Just yesterday, I was also in Vilnius, and I was visiting some small exhibition of Mstislavas Dobužinskis. He was the Lithuanian painter and theater director. And that was the program. So Dobužinskis was doing the decorations and the costumes for the art, Commedia dell'arte theater in interwar Lithuania. And Dobužinskis is not a pure Lithuanian, okay? Then the author, the play, the opera was composed by Italian composer. And then the main conductor in National Theatre in Lithuania in Kaunas was Leiberhoff Mekler, the Jewish prominent leader. And that is a much more interesting and involving putting together information which somehow is not circulating. Partly the occupations, partly the loss, intentional maybe loss of the memoirs. But if we would look more creatively to the situation, definitely we can find the better solution. And since I am teaching at the university, I believe in some part in in education as well, which is not very easily done, but it takes time and it is a process. So a few years ago, Kaunas municipality organized a guided tour, sightseeing in former Kaunas ghetto territory. I am guiding from time to time, so they invited me to take the activity, and I was rather skeptical because, well, Holocaust is not the very joyful experience, and I was thinking people would not be very involved into the activities. Having in mind that again some prejudices, some reservations towards Jewish and non-Jewish history or something like that. Some 20 years ago, there was still very clear division. Jewish history and non-Jewish history. Holocaust is Jewish tragedy, but nothing in common with the Lithuanian experience. So having all this in mind, I was thinking, okay, we will collect some people, but there were two groups of 20 people. So the organizer said that time slot the groups filled in was half an hour, 35 minutes, and everything was already filled. So for me, it was the very positive message, let's say, that actually the interest is growing, and we just should think of how to put the guidelines for searching the information, for getting the information, looking on one hand in front of us, on the other hand looking backwards. As I said, the cooperation, the nicest project of different ethnicities, different backgrounds was still very much functioning in the let's say pre-war or interwar Lithuania, instead of still be glued to the second half 19th century mentality, marking our territories with some kind of landmarks.
Thank you. Marty, do you have a comparison, an example in the Netherlands that you think might be useful to add to this discussion on Sherpa?
Well, I understand it's about the plaque of a street of some person that has not to be fixed or fixed. We have the same discussion in the Netherlands. We have our colonial history in the Netherlands Indies, where atrocities were committed over centuries. And so, but what I wanted to focus on is on the influence of mass communication at the time, on the platforms that Robert is researching. You see a lot of disinformation about historical events, and then it whips up public discussions about how you should deal with this part of history. Well, I can say that in the Netherlands, for instance, the Second World War and colonial history is being taught at school. The young children are generally interested in it, and well, they have to have exams on it, so they have to learn it. But if you erode the educational system, which is happening with the new government, who is cutting down the budget of education, then the field opens for disinformation. So that is, I think, a future problem of how you deal with your own past. I don't know if it connects with the rest here.
Well, I think it connects with the whole theme of the conference. Just to check, yes, we have a question here and a question here. I'm going to take two.
Thank you. Marty Stanova, Czech Embassy to Lithuania. Thank you all for a very interesting discussion. I really like what Rolandas said about politics and history kind of being interweaved together. And I have a question basically for all of you. From what you do, what you study, would you have some recommendation for Ukrainians after the war ends? How should they deal with their traumas, history after the war? Is there something that they can take from your experience and use for themselves? Thank you.
Thank you. And can we pass it to Rob there? Thank you. Please ask your question as well.
Okay, my name is Rob Keukens. I'm from the Netherlands, and I have a question for you, for all of you. It seems to me during the day that we expect a lot from correct information and battle disinformation and policy based on facts. But the reality, for instance, in my country is that they don't care about facts. They don't care about the right information. Our government is blaming, scapegoating immigrants. They are the root of all evil, and they refer to the people, because the people believe that the immigrants are the cause of everything that goes wrong. So we base our policy on what people believe, not on facts. So how can we, what can we do about that?
Thank you. So questions to, deep questions, I think, to all of you.
I can try answer very, very briefly to your question. So be strong and brave enough to say true, even how much unpleasant this true is. And
so this is in relation to Ukraine and
yes,
what they should
absolutely.
do?
For everybody. I would say it's for everybody, you know, the reconciliation with your past, it cannot be, you know, done by, you know, saying half true. So this is what's said about, not by you, by other presenter, that, you know, the morality cannot be, you know, morality if it's a partial morality, you know, selective morality, yeah? And I don't have a definite answer, so because I explained the situation, the problem which exists, but I still believe that, you know, saying and presenting the truth, saying facts, and using all possible instruments, and especially system of education, because in a way, when we're speaking with students in schools or universities, in a way we're educating the society, because kids are coming with their beliefs from their families, and especially with prejudice which are circulated in their families. And in a way, if we present the facts in the schools, so the kids come back home, and I believe it might be a chance that we'll discuss with their parents about all this prejudice, and maybe it will be some change. I hope.
Okay. Marty, let me turn to you.
Well, there's a genealogical law that you only become interested in history if it's 3 generations apart. So I hope that in the future people start to to look back on the history of their grandparents and great-grandparents, and to find out what the history actually is about. I mean, it's very difficult for young people who are in a mass communication society, affluent society, to actually imagine what it would have been to be in a war, see? And young people experience things by doing it, by experiencing the thing. So with the war in Ukraine, I always ask people, what would you do when you were in the war? It's a very personal question, but, well, it's a very moral one, actually. Which situation would you be the victim, or would you be a perpetrator, or would you be just walk along, or would you be in the resistance, you see? And that's a very hard decision to make. And then if you have to step back and look at history, that's even more complicated, because that's out of your personal surroundings, you know? Well, my daughter has been on an international school, like intercultural school, which is typically Amsterdam, because all the schools are intercultural. And she had Moroccan friends, for instance, and very nice people. And the father was born in the Netherlands, so he was actually assimilated. And then suddenly you get this information about, that the Jews are the bad in the society, and because they kill all people. And then I say to the girl, well, I mean, your brothers in the Muslim countries kill each other. So what's the difference, you know? But the reflection, they're so indoctrinated that it's very hard to neutralize indoctrination. And that takes 2 or 3 centuries. Yeah.
And Arunas, are you thinking about Ukraine and what may be possible?
I think that the memorial regime, if we use this term, in Ukraine and Lithuania are very similar. Because in some ways, Ukraine has done more than Lithuania. Talking about the Russian invasion, probably that accelerated the de-Sovietization, the Russification processes within the field of history. In Ukraine, a lot of Lenin monuments fell very quickly, and nobody cared much. Nobody protested. And now they're stepping one step further. They are going to the Russian emperors, to Yekaterina's monuments in Odessa. I don't know whether they are still there or have they fallen already, but that the monuments that show the Ukraine as Novorossiya, New Russia, as a part of Russian Empire, showing that Ukrainians never had their state, and questions whether Ukrainians are some nation, talking about the narrative from Kremlin. So this de-Russification process and the communization process is taking place fast, but they also face a lot of serious issues as Lithuanians, Ukrainian collaboration with the Nazi regime and participation in the Holocaust, which probably is just as a sensitive topic as in Lithuania. Then Volhynia in 1943, murders in Galicia, where they were brutal battles and 100,000 Poles fell and approximately 30,000 Ukrainians, if I'm right. So I can see two very serious issues of the 20th century in Ukraine, and I don't think they will resolve them very soon. I know Babin Yar, for example, center is there, and a lot of books are being issued about the Holocaust in Ukraine. But Volhynia, Galicia problem, having in mind the Polish side, and despite the aggression against Ukraine, and that Poland is one of the most avid supporters of Ukraine, but when they start talking about history, even on the very highest level, Prime Minister Tusk also said that Ukrainians are guilty for murdering Poles, and they should say that they are sorry and somehow memorialize these events. And despite the difficult times in Ukraine, and nobody knows how what the end will be, these historic wounds, they require some time for now, at least for now, when we have active war. Otherwise, we stick our fingers into these wounds, and such behavior of politicians is not very wise.
Linas, can I ask you, do you think it's possible to make people care about the truth? Even to make politicians care about the truth?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think on one hand, on the other hand, because I do believe in the, say, power of truth. Sooner or later, the truth would expose itself. Despite if we want it, if we do not want it. Speaking about politicians in particular, still they want to be re-elected, or they want to be in power. So that's why they have to search for the audiences. And again, manifesting as if patriotism, as if the care of our people, and so on and so forth, is one of the quickest ways to get the attention, to get the vote. So that's why sometimes politicians might be, using only part of the truth, a portion of the truth, in order to achieve their goals. So that would be my answer. But generally, yes, I think there are politicians who are working, seeking systematically for the truth and supporting the processes. But again, at this point, you might be optimistic or pessimistic, because we see the wave of radicalization all over the Europe or United States of America at the same time, and then the not believing to the facts, but to some kind of just social media, something like that. Most probably all of us had heard that for Donald Trump, the immigrants are eating American cats and dogs. which also makes some kind of impression. But again, speaking about the fact-orientated education or perception, if we feel that it does not work with the younger generation, something like that, so let's make them feel. Let's initiate some kind of I don't know, meetings, some kind of projects of hosting those immigrants who are as if very dangerous, something like that. So through very small empathetic things, I would say also that there might be the results which might be a little bit surprising at the end. And I'll end my speech quoting Leonard Cohen poetry. There is a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. So all at any case, there is a possibility at least to do something.
We just have a few more minutes to go, unless the moderator gives me an indication he wants. Would you prefer me to wrap up now?
I would like, may I have the, oh, I don't need a microphone.
You don't need a microphone?
No, because I have one. I'm working with a microphone.
Fine.
No, the discussion reminds me of one thing that happened in the Netherlands. So, you know, Abraham de Zwaan was talking about the police actions in the Dutch Indies and the crimes that were committed there. We've been discussing how to deal with the past. So what I find very interesting in the Military Museum in Soesterberg, they have one installation which focuses on one of the military leaders that was leading the police actions, Westerveld. And it shows the two sides of the man, how he was perceived at that time as a war hero and how he is now perceived as a war criminal. And so you show the man with the two sides, right? And I think like this plaque, like of General Vitra, actually should be in a museum showing the two sides. Right? And then another thing, in the same museum, they have an incredibly interesting installation. You can choose your war. And then a film starts and it stops and you have to make a choice. And the rest of the film follows that choice. And it's very educational for young people to understand that choices, you know, are sometimes difficult, but they always have consequences. So I think this is something where Lithuania could learn something from.
Exactly.
Thank you. We have a few minutes left. Would anybody like to make a final remark? Perhaps thinking about how, especially we get to that stage, how do we encourage this process to happen in each of your societies? But please keep an eye on the clock.
What from general perspective, maybe not directly to the Holocaust education topic, but from general perspective, what I think we do lack in our education, let it be school children, pupils, let it be already adults, possibility to make mistakes, because we are very afraid to make mistakes, and in some cases it limits us very much. So that's that one message which should be transferred. Another message, that actually accepting that you have made a mistake, or to say I am sorry, to apologize, is also not a sign of being a weak personality, weak nation, something like that. On the contrary, only the strong personality, the strong community could accept what the person or the community has done wrong, and to show, to give the examples that actually saying I am sorry, to let's say go in terms with the past at this point is not the sign of being a weak individual or society.
Any other final remarks? Or no? Right.
Yeah, I would like to.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Although I am a historian, the further I live, the more pessimistic I become towards academic research, because you can write and issue 10 books about the Holocaust, and a person will still believe what their grandparents told them, instead of reading books and believing them or trusting academic research. So probably a possible solution could be media as an intermediary between the academicians and the society, the more understandable text that could affect the society more than academic research. Of course, without a doubt, we need to continue with academic research because it is the basis for more understandable texts available to public. And somebody said that, I don't know who, that beauty will save the world. But in a way, it's true through art, through film, on the topic of history. For example, Vaida's movie Katynia, at least in Lithuania, it impressed people so much more than books, articles about Katynia events. And I believe that this art world is very effective. And Mr. Van Worden talked about games on the topic of history, gaming. That would be a very good way to involve young people, engage them in learning about the history, especially if we want to engage the Z generation. They are gamers, they are visually driven people. And of course, literature and documentaries, this world could be used to form the narratives and strengthen our historic memory.
Thank you. All I can say is welcome to my podcast at some point, Arunas. Ronaldas would like to have a word, but Marty, did you want to say something first? And then I'll give Ronaldas the last word.
First.
Okay. So even though a professional historian, Arunas is a little bit skeptical about historic possibilities of historical research, I still believe in the power of knowledge. I still believe in the power of education. And I still believe in the morality when it comes to the politics. Of course, politics and morality, it's two very, very different things, and it's difficult to combine. And the history of humankind shows that it's where morality and politics were apart. But in a way, it also shows that the political decisions and politics without the moral considerations at the end of the day are bad politics. So I believe in these things, and we should work and we should hope and for a better future, for a better understanding.
Right. So I'd like you all to join me with saying thank you very, very much to the whole panel for really interesting set of presentations, and thank you so much for your questions as well.